Hey guys, Varti here from HOKI, and today I'm going to walk you guys through our production of In the End We Become Strangers in Memories, and this is the first track of the EP Caught Up With a Friend, and it was released last week. So let's take a quick listen to the track and I'll dive into all the details of the production and the decisions that we took. So yeah, that's it. It is a shorter song and it's a bit more on the ambient edge. It's a bit less dancey. The kick rhythm we hear is very specific. First off, I want to talk about the overall track organization. That's kind of important. I always color my kick orange, the bass blue. That's a pluckier bass, this one, which is arpeggiated. We'll go into more detail right now. Pianos and pads, I put them white because for me they kind of give a sense of the whole vibe of what the track is about. In terms of if you remove that, it just feels super dry. The orchestral instruments, I wanted to have a bit more organicness in the track itself aside from the vocals. The synthy leads that are happening in the track, especially the last one that grows, and then the vocals at the end. This is how I organize my sessions all the time. Color coding, kind of keep things organized, one thing less to think about, and keeping the order straightforward. So as you see, it's not a very complicated track. It doesn't have a lot of channels. I'm not the type to have hundreds of channels in my productions. I like to keep it simple. Also, it's important to note that the genre itself gives to that as well, right? What's important here is how am I going to, it's all about the composition and the sound selection, the layering of the instruments. How am I going to communicate the message, the emotion that I'm trying to, with what I have. So I don't need to have 15 layers. I don't have effects happening. Everything's modulating in itself and adding movement to the track, which we're going to see in detail right now. Now let's start off with the kick. Let me just mute everything and we'll start off with the kick. So one thing that's important to note, the kick is now 4 on the floor. It's, as you see here, instead of the kick coming on the second beat and the third beat and the fourth beat, it's coming on a second beat, on the third beat, the first and the third, but in between it's skipping the second beat and kind of playing 1/8 after. So it kind of creates this cool feel. So that's kind of the repetition of it. If we are to say, initially this was a kick I built on Kick 2, Sonic Academy's Kick 2. I flattened it and put different processing on it. So one thing I want to point out, I realized that the kick initially was a bit on the, it's warmer. It had a roominess, and initially it had a lot of sustaining low end. So what I did, I put in a transient designer through Neutron, and the goal here was to increase the attack to get a bit more hit on the kick and drop down the sustain to leave a bit more room in the track in terms of the low end. Because the bass you're going to see right now is a very moving bass line. Want to kind of have a bit of space, kind of have the kick warm, but at the same time, something that's going to cut through the mix. Because initially it wasn't cutting through the mix at all. So the transient shaper really, really helped a lot. Second in line, I got the Supermassive Valhalla, which is not something I usually put on a kick. But if we go in the automation lanes, we see right here that it's only coming in at the end of the phrase. Right, so the way I've automated the auto, it has a delay of around 50 milliseconds, and I've automated the mix right here on the last hit, so it kind of creates a big wobbling kick. Again, not really traditional in terms of approach, in terms of what I do, but I want to experiment different types of feel on the kick. Especially in this case, the kick is more of a rhythmic, thumpy vibe. It's not 4 on the floor. It's not dance. I also put a declicker from RX, just the settings as is, as a single band, because I felt like going through this processing was creating these weird artifacts, and it kind of helped a lot. So yeah, that's the kick in itself. Now, moving on to the bass, I've called it bass pluck. I'm using Signal from Contact. I'll show you guys which preset it is. I've played around with the sound itself. So Native Instruments Contact opens up, Signal from Output right here, and I've used their cinematic sample pack has a preset called Playful ARP. So it's an arpeggiator that has different layers, and let's see what it sounds like. So let's go in the MIDI clip and see what's happening. Now, first of all, let's identify the scale. In Ableton Live 11, we have the option to set in the scale. We just click on the scale right here, and in this case, we're in C# Dorian to be precise, not major or minor. It's in a church mode. I like the Dorian scale a lot, and as you see, once I select C# Dorian, all the highlighted blues are right below the note itself. There's no note that's found outside of it. If I fold it, I see it's all highlighted blue. That means all these notes are in the scale, and all my notes that I'm playing are in the scale. So initially I came up with the piano part, which has a top line. I copy pasted in the bass, and I removed the top voicing. We'll look at the piano later on for a better understanding. Let me unfold it now. So what I'm kind of playing right here is I'm playing a C# minor, and then I'm actually playing, this is an inversion. I'm playing here we go. I'm actually playing E major following. So from the C sharp minor to E major, I'm going from the first note of the scale to the third note of the scale. And then what we're doing here is if you drop the F, this is an inversion as well. The F makes it an F sharp major. Let me just put this back down to the B. So the cool thing about this small progression here, we're going from, so the F sharp being the fifth of the scale, we're going from the 5, so from the 1 to the 3, sorry, to the 4, but we're going to the lower inverted. What this does is it creates a bass line, and you hear that thematic in the track very well. And then following through that, we in the piano version we had a D sharp, so we're playing a G sharp, the fifth of the scale, right, the dominant, which is the second most stable note or chord in the, so we're playing a G sharp minor, but the D has been removed and the B, the third, has been, so this allows to climb back up to the B. And it kind of ends on the tonic, which is a C sharp minor. And this right here is pretty much a D sharp minor, which is the second. So we're going from, if I remember, a 1, a 3, a lower 4, or a 1, 3, 4, let's say, and then 5. We build up to the dominant, we drop 2 and back to a 1. And you're gonna hear in the piano, you're gonna hear that ascending line that is very. So yeah, so one thing else I want to point out, talking about the theory, or in C sharp during, etc. If you listen to the rhythm, it's a very 4 on the floor major rhythm. There's no triplets in here, but if in fact there were triplet elements, right? So this is what complicates things in production. Start blending two prominent elements, one playing a triplet, one not playing a triplet, you might have some clashes. But as we move ahead in the track and activate the other groups, you're going to see it's going to start, the track is going to start unraveling. It's going to make more and more sense. Now, in terms of the piano, I got 3 piano layers. First one is pretty much the triplet I was talking about. And right now, the reason why it's blue is because it's frozen. So to make sure that jams when I'm playing and recording at the same time, you see right here, these are the chords that we saw on the bass. But now we're we have a top voice that's ascending here. So the bass was descending, the top voice was ascending, and it goes back to it. So let's check it out. So it's a very unique rhythm. It's a triplet that's playing, and the chord progressions happen quick, and then they a while, right, for like 3 bars, and then again progressions switch on 1 bar and then stay the same. So this is what's right here, because we're kind of climbing up to the 1 in the lead voicing. We're actually playing the roots, the 1, 3, because the 2 sharp, 3, 4, but then we're not playing anymore. We're dropping down to the D sharp, which is the 5th, and then back to D sharp, back to the B. What's kind of cool here is when we talk about different voicing, we want to make sure that if a singer were to sing just like the melody itself, not the harmony, we want the voicings not to jump, go from like a super high note to super low note. Keep sure that each voice kind of stays nearby, and that kind of helps you a lot with resolution and how chords resolve. Getting too technical and complicated, if you ever learn, you'll see this becomes important. So I'm using Native Instruments una corda. I'm using again a second una corda with slightly different flavor. That's just, we're just playing the note, we're not playing triplet. And this the ability to kind of emphasize on the down hits. So the first beat, the third beat, and then the downbeat on the 2, which holds, and then it continues, emphasizes the main hit of the triplet. Then we got an ambient hybrid key. It's cool to see that stuff that are more piano based, more ambient, you want to make sure that you don't quantize stuff too much. See, there's a bit of space. It's not perfect, and I don't want to quantize it. I want to keep it a bit more human, organic. I want to keep the imperfections in it. So that's pretty much the piano part all together. So there's a complexity happening here, which again, this is something that producers that I teach to keep things simple. But overall, the ARP bass is playing a da na na, and the playing da na na together might create some clash. But the way I've mixed it and the way I've layered all the instruments, it's easier to listen to, and I want to create that instability in the track a bit, especially as the introductory track of the album kind of sets the mood in a really interesting way. On to the pad section, we have again 3 different layers, more of an organish vibe. If you look at the automation lane, you see how this Anjuna pad from Silent opens up. It's much more of your typical pad sound that you hear in a lot of electronic music, and kind of creates a lot of movement and attention at the end. And the third layer is pretty much a droning layer. I'm just gonna unfreeze it for now. And it's that sound that you hear at the beginning and at the end where it sounds like kids playing. It's actually not. It's a sound in Omnisphere. Let me just open it up. Oh, computer's struggling today. It's basically a universe of peace. It's a preset that has 2 different layers. The second layer, I choose School of Whales. So it's actually whales like chants that you're kind of hearing, which is kind of interesting. But what's cool about this layer right here I'm playing the drone. Usually when you drone on tonic, in this case which is a C sharp, because we're in C sharp Dorian, and you play the 5th, which in this case is the G sharp. And I repeat that up here, C sharp, G sharp, and the lower C as a bass, and I just kind of hold that all across the track. Kind of creates a sense of tension, ambience. It fills up the space as well, and I'm not following the chord progression. I've also added one E here, the E being the 3rd of the chord. And what's important here is that I don't have too many E's. I just have one E. Even though the 3rd is a stable note, it's not as stable as the tonic or the dominant. So I don't want to. A lot of times you see producers producing a drone sound with the tonic and the 5th only, without the 3rd. But in this case, I decided to put the 3rd. It sounded well, so I'm like, I'll just keep it. Cool. So far the track sounds. Missing the orchestral sounds. We got strings right here. Let me just freeze this quickly. It's gonna take a couple of seconds. I'm just freezing stuff to make sure that my computer is not it's not gonna explode. Right behind my face right here, you see the CPU usage is at 71%, so it's quite high. So I'd rather play it safe and and freeze stuff. I usually, once I get something to talk about, meanwhile, once you get further on in the mix, when you start adding a lot of plugins and your computer is getting loaded, depending on the speed of your computer, it's always good to flatten stuff. It's good because it reduces the load on your computer, it processes the algorithms better, and also you kind of move forward and you kind of commit to it and move forward. And often, a lot of times, producers struggle with that. They know they have the option to change it whenever they want, and the track never finishes. So, looking at the strings right here, So it's a tremolo string. So this is quite interesting because I'm not automating the audio. I'm not automating the faders or the audio channel in general. I'm just automating the MIDI. So this is MIDI automation, and I'm modulating the main component. In this case, if I were to unfreeze this, I believe, yeah, it's Contact. It's a string ensemble that comes with native instruments Contact. I'm kind of automating this as it moves forward, so it adds dynamics and movement to the track if it's done over a longer part. And I've selected tremolo because I want the tremolo instead of the sustain of the violin. Looking at the other orchestral instrument, I'm using Labs from Spitfire Audio. Interesting enough, it's a free plugin that I have. You could download it from Spitfire Audio. And it's quite interesting because, let me open it up. It has really cool sounds. It's very simple in terms of design. Let's just play it. And the unique character of not only the sound but also the melodies, I've copy pasted the chord progression. I've chosen two voicings. So imagine like violin A and violin B kind of playing counter melodies together and emphasizing specific voicing in the song, which kind of pokes out just a bit more on top of the pads and gives a specific texture. If I'd chosen maybe this voicing or another voicing, the vibe would have been slightly different. It would have been the same vibe overall, but it would have emphasized on different types of melodies within the harmonies. So it's definitely a cool technique. When you're layering, don't always copy paste. If you copy paste, occasionally remove some voicings and emphasize on specific lead lines, because every harmony is made of a variety of a collection of melodies that are piled up one on top of the other. So didn't want to do that. Let me quickly freeze this as well. And next up is the lead, and then we're going to talk about the vocals. Now, in terms of the lead, what's important here is that I have two leads going on, and one that's kind of there the whole track. And I believe I'm using Analog Dreams, which is an amazing plugin through Native Instruments. It's interesting because this is the preset Don Juan from Analog Dreams, I believe 2.0, yeah, which has a lot of movements and automations in the presets itself. You could go in the macros and change anything you want. So the cutoff, the resonance, the filter overall, the high passes, the pitch are all jumping around non-stop based out of LFOs. It adds so much character and vibe to the sound, to the song itself. It's super, super cool. And the main lead itself, the one that really distorts and opens up, is this one right here. Has a very analog vibe. And what I did right here is I add an automation to increase the cutoff. And the more it opens up, the more it kind of adds the high end, which is highly distorted. Now, a conversation to have about distortion in your tracks. In general, it's important to isolate sections of the track and say to yourself, okay, I'm going to have distorted element in this part of the track, and it's going to be one element, not 5 elements that are distorted. If you have many elements that are distorted all at the same time, it makes it quite confusing for the listener to understand what's going on in the track. So the soundscape I have in the track is quite warm and mellow. Adding that distorted sound, there's space for it. You have room to understand to hear it. And the cool thing is, difference between this part and this part, it's quite mellow, right? And there's some modulation in the oscillators that are quite cool. And then by the time he gets here, so it's interesting how it slowly comes in and slowly opens up, and it's not distorted all across the track. Then it would just be too tiring to listen to. I'm using Reactor 6 here. Using the preset the Wabi, which I've played around with. It's a cool type of plugin because it kind of jumps around different types of oscillators. Like for example, it goes from, it's a rhythmic. At any given rhythmic measure, it jumps from one oscillator to another, and then really adds a lot of interesting energy to the track. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you see both the filter and the oscillators, as I go through them, they change completely. They're similar, but I mean, they're different, right? So that's what adds a bit of that movement. Now, let me freeze this and talk a bit about the vocals. Oh, this is going to take time. So in terms of vocals, you're going to see we have, even though it shows 2 layers, one of them is muted, it's actually 1 layer. So the way we work, and I've talked about this in the past, Brent comes to the studio, drop down his idea. A lot of times the first idea is not only what we like, but it's also the final take because he's a good singer. And I don't need to record him 50 times to get the best parts and then comp it. Comping is so we work with 1 layer. Rare that we do with 2 layers if we want to put cool effects, but overall it's always 1 layer. And also we don't comp. I don't comp, or I don't heavily comp. Like he'll sing a section where like a whole phrase, a verse. I don't like comping that verse. I like it that he gets it in 1 take, and he usually does. I do some slight tuning. There are some songs where we don't tune at all too. That works as well. Sometimes leaving the imperfections and the vocals work as well. I don't know, I guess we're obsessed with breaking the rules a bit in music. And not that we're breaking the rules, but we're just not being too anal retentive about, oh, it needs to sound perfect. It doesn't. It's just what we're capturing is we're capturing the experience. I'm just going to show you guys a bit of the vocal processing that I have. I'm using Nectar. Now, in terms of Nectar, there's a first compressor that's capturing the bigger peaks in the vocals. The second compressor is smoothing out the remaining of the vocals, the remaining compressed vocals. A bit of EQ where we cut the low end, which is unnecessary in vocals, and kind of boost the highs. A light level of de-essing, a slight level of distortion saturation, very light, to kind of give a spark and a shine to the vocals, and very, very minimal reverb. The main reverb comes in with the CLA vocals, which is pretty much, again, an EQ. Has an EQ component, a compression component, a reverb, a delay, and a pitch. That's for the wideness of the track. This is a preset that I've created through CLA. And then finally, at the end of the chain, again, this is a vocal chain that I use on all the HOKI tracks. Our Vox, Renaissance Vox from Waves, which kind of adds couple of dB of gain reduction in terms of limiting. It's a limiter for vocals, and it adds a lot of punch and a lot of stability to the overall performance of the vocals. And now let's hear that as well. Oops, sorry. Replace my mind for something new. Are we going the compression on the Nectar is quite minimal. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope this was educational and inspiring at the same time, showing you guys different layers of the production, how we take decisions, how I produce a lot of times. And a lot of our production workflow is very, very organic. We don't overthink stuff. We don't care how things are done. We just do it the way we like it. For a long time, I've written music following the rules, and this is the way it needs to be. And I got to a point where after years and years, almost a decade now of writing music, I just do whatever I like now. And I feel like more of who I am comes out through that experience. So I'm glad you guys have enjoyed it. If you guys haven't heard the full song, it's been out. It's on all the platforms. And at the end of July, we're releasing the entire 4-track EP, which is a super cool experience. So check it out. Speak soon. See you guys.